The 4th of July weekend had finally arrived, and I was standing on my back deck watching my nieces and nephew splash in the crystal-clear waters of the lake behind my house. Their laughter echoed across the water as they took turns jumping off the small dock I'd built last summer. My sister, Emily, was setting up the picnic table, while her husband fired up the grill. It was supposed to be a perfect family day. I'd bought this property 2 years ago, specifically because of the lakefront access. The previous owner, old Mr. Hendricks, had owned not just a house, but also the entire western shore of the small lake. About 3 acres of waterfront that wrapped around the lake's edge like a crescent moon. When he passed away, his estate sold everything as one parcel, and I'd stretched my budget to the breaking point to afford it. But it was worth every penny for moments like this. The neighborhood had an HOA, but my property was technically outside the main subdivision boundaries. I paid voluntary dues to help maintain the community entrance and streetlights, but my lakefront was entirely private property. The deed was crystal clear about that. I checked it thoroughly with my real estate attorney before signing. I was just biting into my burger when I saw her marching down the shore toward us. Patricia Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the Lakeview Estates HOA. She was wearing white capri pants, a visor, and an expression that could curdle milk. I'd met her exactly once at a neighborhood cookout, where she spent 30 minutes lecturing me about the proper way to trim hedges. Excuse me. Patricia's shrill voice cut through the peaceful afternoon. She was waving her arms like she was directing air traffic. You there? What do you think you're doing? My 9-year-old nephew, Tyler, stopped mid-cannonball on the dock, confused. Emily looked at me with raised eyebrows. I set down my burger and walked toward the water's edge where Patricia was now standing, hands on her hips. Hi, Patricia. We're having a family barbecue. Can I help you with something? Help me? Help me? Her voice rose an octave. You can help me by removing all these people from the lake immediately. This is HOA property, and you're in violation of multiple community rules. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Patricia pulled out her phone, scrolling aggressively. According to the Lakeview Estates HOA bylaws, Section 12, lake access is limited to residents only. Guest usage requires a permit submitted 48 hours in advance. You have... She paused to count, her finger jabbing toward each of my family members. 8 unauthorized individuals using HOA waters. That's 8 separate violations. Emily had walked over now, drying her hands on a towel. I'm his sister. These are our kids. We're just swimming. I don't care if you're Queen of England, Patricia snapped. The rules are the rules. No permit, no lake access. Furthermore, Section 12, subsection D clearly states that no more than 4 guests are allowed per household at the lake at any given time. You're in violation, and I'm issuing a citation. My brother-in-law, Marcus, joined us, his spatula still in hand. Lady, we're just trying to have a nice family day. What's the big deal? The big deal, Patricia said, her face reddening, is that people like you think the rules don't apply to them. I've been the HOA compliance officer for 6 years, and I've seen it all. First, it's unauthorized guests. Next thing you know, you're throwing wild parties, littering, disturbing the peace. It's a slippery slope, and I won't have it in my community. Your community? I felt my jaw tighten. Yes, my community. I own a home here. I pay my dues. I follow the rules. She crossed her arms triumphantly. Unlike some people who think they're special, I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. My kids were watching from the water, their fun days suddenly tense and weird. Tyler had climbed out and was standing behind Emily, his towel wrapped around his shoulders. Patricia, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you can flaunt HOA regulations, she interrupted. I want everyone out of the water. Now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing. That did it. My patience evaporated. Patricia, I said, my voice deadly calm. This is my private land. She blinked. What? This lake, this shoreline, the dock, the water your feet are currently standing in. It's all my private property. I own it. Patricia's mouth opened and closed. That's impossible. The lake is HOA property. It says so right in the bylaws of the Lakeview Estate subdivision. Yes, I continued. But if you actually read the property records, you'd see that this section of the lake, from that cluster of birch trees all the way around to those rocks over there, is on my deed. 3 acres of waterfront. Completely private. Not HOA property. The color was draining from Patricia's face, but she wasn't ready to back down. I don't believe you. The HOA has owned this lake for 15 years. Everyone knows that. The HOA owns the eastern shore and the north end. I explained, trying to keep my voice level. This western shore was always privately owned by Mr. Hendricks. When he died, I bought it. All of it. I have the deed, the survey, the title insurance. All of it proving this is my property. Patricia's eyes darted around, looking for an escape route from her mistake. But her pride wouldn't let her retreat. Well, even if that's true, which I doubt, you still live in this community and you still need to respect community standards. Having this many people making noise, creating a disturbance. We're having a barbecue on a holiday weekend. Patricia, we're not having a rave. The noise ordinance doesn't apply to reasonable recreational use on private property during daylight hours. I finished. I know, because I actually read the county regulations when I bought this place. Marcus couldn't help himself. He laughed. So, let me get this straight. You came over here, threatened to call the cops, tried to kick us off the property, and you didn't even know who owned it. Patricia's face went from white to bright red. The HOA president told me, everyone says wrong. I said firmly. And you know what? I've been pretty easygoing about the HOA. I pay voluntary dues, even though I don't have to. I go to the occasional meeting. I keep my property nice. But coming onto my land and threatening my family? That's over the line. I was just trying to enforce the rules, Patricia said, but her voice had lost all its authority. She sounded almost plaintive now. Rules that don't apply here, Emily chimed in. You didn't even check before you came charging over here like some kind of lake police. Patricia looked around at all of us, clearly realizing how badly this had gone. I was told by the HOA board that all lake access was under HOA jurisdiction. Then the board was wrong, I said. And instead of checking the facts, you came over here ready to ruin a family holiday based on bad information. I'm just trying to maintain property values and community standards, she said weakly. By harassing your neighbors? Marcus shook his head. That's not maintaining anything except a reputation for being difficult. Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face somehow got even redder. I need to go. Before you do, I said, stopping her, I want to make something very clear. This is the last time you set foot on my property without an invitation. If you have concerns about something I'm doing, you can knock on my front door like a civilized person and have a conversation. But you don't get to storm onto my land and start making demands. Are we clear? She nodded stiffly, still clutching her phone. And Patricia, you might want to let the HOA board know they need to check their property maps. Because if they're telling people they have authority over land they don't own, that could become a legal problem. Without another word, Patricia turned and walked quickly back the way she'd come, her white capris now muddy from the shore. We all watched her retreat in silence. Tyler was the first to speak. Aunt Sarah, is she gonna come back? I ruffled his wet hair. No, buddy, she's not. Come on, let's get back to having fun. But the mood had shifted. The kids returned to the water, but more subdued now. Emily pulled me aside while Marcus went back to rescuing the burgers. That was intense, she said quietly. Does this happen a lot? First time, actually. I admitted I've heard Patricia is notorious for this kind of thing, but she's never bothered me before. I guess she finally worked up the nerve. Well, you handled it perfectly. The look on her face when you said you owned it, Emily grinned. Priceless. Over the next hour, I couldn't quite shake the irritation. The day had been going so perfectly. I kept thinking about Patricia's entitlement, her absolute certainty that she had the right to order people around. It wasn't just about the lake. It was about a mindset that assumed authority without bothering to verify the facts. Around sunset, as we were packing up, I saw a car pull into my driveway. A man in his 60s got out, looking apologetic. I recognized him as Robert Chun, the HOA president. "Sarah, I am so sorry," he said before even reaching me. "Patricia just called me, absolutely mortified. I owe you a huge apology." I crossed my arms, but nodded for him to continue. "Patricia was operating under a misunderstanding that I should have corrected years ago," Robert explained. "When the subdivision was first developed, there was talk about potentially purchasing your section of the lake if it ever came up for sale. That conversation happened decades ago, but somehow it turned into neighborhood folklore that we own the whole lake. I should have set the record straight, but honestly, it never came up until today." "She threatened to call the police on my family, Robert." He winced. "I know. That's completely unacceptable. I've already asked for her resignation as compliance officer. She's too aggressive, and this isn't the first complaint, just the worst one. I'm bringing it to the board meeting next week." "I don't want to cause problems," I said, feeling my anger deflate a bit. "I just want to enjoy my property in peace." "You have every right to," Robert assured me. "And I want you to know that the HOA will be sending out a corrected property map to all residents, making it absolutely clear what's HOA property and what's private. This won't happen again." Marcus had wandered over, catching the end of the conversation. "Will there be an apology?" Robert pulled out his phone. "Already drafted. Patricia will be hand-delivering a written apology tomorrow, and I'm sending a formal letter as HOA president clarifying situation and apologizing for the intrusion." I had to admit, that was more than I'd expected. "Okay, I appreciate that, Robert. Again, I'm truly sorry your holiday was disrupted. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're part of this community, even if your property is technically outside it." He smiled. "And I hope you'll still come to the occasional neighborhood event." After Robert left, Emily helped me carry the last of the dishes inside. Well, that ended better than expected. "Yeah," I agreed, looking out at the lake as the sun painted the water orange and gold. "But next time, I'm putting up a private property sign." "Next time," Marcus said, "Patricia will probably cross the street to avoid you." He was right. Over the following weeks, I'd occasionally see Patricia around the neighborhood. Every single time, she'd suddenly become very interested in checking her phone or examining her mailbox. She never made eye contact, never waved, just a lot of strategic avoidance. The HOA did send out the corrected maps, along with a newsletter article explaining property boundaries. Several neighbors actually stopped by to apologize for assuming they knew who owned what. A few even expressed relief that they could stop worrying about Patricia citing them for violations. 2 months later, Patricia quietly resigned from the board entirely, and I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd put her house up for sale. Apparently, once her reputation as a neighborhood enforcer crumbled, she couldn't handle the social awkwardness of actually having to interact with people as equals. My nieces and nephews came back for Labor Day weekend. This time, we had the entire day of swimming, barbecuing, and fun without a single interruption. Tyler asked if that mean lady was going to show up again. "Nope," I told him, watching him cannonball off the dock. She learned an important lesson about making sure you have your facts straight before you start throwing your weight around. "What lesson?" he asked, treading water. I smiled. That it's always a good idea to know who actually owns a property before you try to kick someone off it. As the sun set over my private lake, with my family's laughter echoing across the water, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. Not just because Patricia had been wrong, but because I'd stood my ground, defended my property, and protected my family's right to enjoy what I'd worked so hard to afford. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes, it's just watching someone who was absolutely certain of their authority realize they never had any to begin with, and then enjoying your beautiful private lake in peace.